We have three very special guests, and we're going to be talking about a very special film, and I'd like to welcome them here up at the front right now. Please, Joe Dante, Brenda Balaski, and Dee Wallace, come on up.
Hi, guys!
Hey, what are you doing here, man?
And that is representation of how it was on the set.
Great minds think alike.
I'm letting them sort this out themselves.
Yes, probably the best.
Well, first of all, I want to thank all three of you very, very much for coming to Calgary and to this wonderful festival. I think it's fantastic. I'm from Winnipeg myself, and I traveled here, and this was a big reason to come here, and I feel very honored to conduct
We've
this.
had a great time.
Really, Calgary's great. I love
Yeah,
Calgary.
beautiful.
Yep.
Well, I also attended the screening last night
Oh.
that CUF, the Calgary Underground Film Festival, was doing at the Globe Cinema, showing a 4K transfer of The Howling.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd love to. Anybody go?
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. We got a few.
How
people.
many virgins went that never seen it before? No,
Ah.
because there were a lot of virgins in the
There were.
theater.
There were a lot of first-timers for sure for that film. One thing I noted, and I wanted to start off our discussion right before we get into The Howling, was the theater erupted a bit, and it was so nice to see during Roger Corman's cameo in the film. And of course, Roger Corman has helped so many careers over the years. And I guess my first question to you there, Joe, is would The Howling even have been done if it was not for Roger Corman and all of his influence?
I would be sitting there saying, I don't have another job. The thing about Roger is he gave jobs to people who didn't know what they want. They didn't know what they were doing, but they knew what they wanted. They wanted to be in it. And he was a very good judge of people who really cared enough to stay late and make the best women in prison movie that they could possibly make out of the material he gave them, which was usually pretty sparse. And on the way, he produced 1,000 movies. Some of them very good, some of them not very good. But he was a pioneer in his way. And the great thing in The Howling was that there's a scene in Rosemary's Baby where Mia Farrow is in a phone booth and Ralph Fiennes is that way, that cop outside, she thinks, and she's really worried, she's afraid she's going to, she has that phone, she's going to come in. It turns out it's really casting a producer. So we decided to do a similar thing in The Howling where Dee is on the phone and she thinks the mad killer is outside, and it turns out to be Roger Corman. And in a magnanimous gesture, he agreed to look for change. Because he's known to be very parsimonious.
That's very common.
Nice way to put it.
People who didn't know that there was a joke there, they just go, why are we hanging on this guy looking for change? And so I always thought I should never do such self-indulgent jokes.
I have to say, I wouldn't be here either if it weren't for Roger Corman, because I was doing a movie called Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, and Tina Hirsch was editing it, but she didn't have an editing bay. So she called Roger and said, could I use your editing? Can I come over to New World? And he said, absolutely, come over. But she came over and she ended up sitting next to this little guy who was cutting his first film. And so they would go, what do you think of this cut? What do you think of that cut? And that's how Joe got to know me. So he would never have cast me, I don't think, if those moments hadn't happened.
And I
go
wouldn't
back
be
to
here
Roger Corman.
if it weren't for this guy. So, it's all very incestuous with us.
One thing I noted as well is that the practical effects of The Howling, particularly in this new 4K transfer, look amazing. There were a couple of other werewolf movies that came out right around the same time as The Howling. American Werewolf in London and Wolfen, for instance, were two of them. But your werewolf, Full Moon. There you are. Yeah, there were a few. That's for sure. Your wolves look spectacular, though. Was there really a special effort to set it apart from all the other guys?
Well, we based them on woodcuts, old woodcuts, and we didn't want to go to the same route that all the other werewolf movies had tried, because there have been so many. And the producer of the movie, Dan Blatt, when he showed me the script, he said, it's an amazing story. People turn into animals. This is practically a subgenre. He didn't watch this kind of movies, so he didn't know that this was a breakthrough. But there were a lot of werewolf movies out there, and it was difficult to try to raise to the top. But we saw them, even though John Myers really had a lot of money. I didn't. And Rick Baker, who was supposed to do our werewolf effects, in fact, didn't go to John Myers. He always also didn't do his werewolf movie either. Somehow, strangely, as soon as our movie started, John got the money for it, and so we lost it. But Rick put Rob Boutique in on it.
We got Rob
And Rob was involved, and he followed some of the ideas that Rick was doing and whatever. And they were, for the time, very groundbreaking, and I think the techniques that we used are now, I would say, probably obsolete in the sense that we didn't see them. But there's something we said for practical effects on the set. You see it on camera, and it's done.
And Rob was so dedicated.
So good.
He would, the light would be a little bit this way. Let me spray the. I remember.
Spray the goop, gotta have it.
Yeah, gotta spray the goop.
Dee, I have to ask, I saw the film again last night, and a moral of the story occurred to me. Do not follow your wife up to her therapy.
Every husband I've had has learned that.
When all three of you think about the experience of the Howling, what first comes to mind all these years later?
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun. I mean, we worked ourselves to death. The schedule was, if I remember, we'd work 3 nights and then turn around in the days. It was
We're
tough.
shooting TV, really. It was
Yeah.
on that kind of a schedule. Yeah.
But I happened to be married, engaged to Christopher, who played my husband. They didn't know it when they hired him, by the way. So we had a lot of fun in our trailer.
That's why you were in the trailer.
But you can't work with Joe and not have fun.
No, you can't.
He's just fun
We
all
try to
the
make it fun.
time.
It's tough enough to make movies. It really is hard. And that's why there are directors who get their stuff out of making people uncomfortable on the set and being tyrannical and stuff. And I don't think that's the way to get.
I would just shut down.
Because the crew won't like you. And I've known directors who were sabotaged by their own crews because they were so mean to them. And it's like the crew is like, it's part of your
Family.
It's your arm, you need these people to make the movie. And any idea they come up with that's better than your idea, take it. Because it's all for the best of the movie.
That's the great thing about working with Joe, is he's always open to
Always.
your creative input. And I've written scenes, I've added so much improv. Bob Cardinal and I did a whole scene. We were just sitting there waiting for them to set up cameras in Amazon Women on the Moon. And they were setting up 5 live cameras, and we were sitting there waiting. And so we started shooting, stuff back and forth. And Joe comes out finally and goes, "Okay, the cameras are ready, come on." And Bob says, "Just listen to this once." And so we ran the scene in front of Joe and said, "Oh God, bring the cameras out here." He's just in the moment,
I got in trouble.
You did get in trouble, that scene worked, Yeah.
Filmmaker and terrific writer John Sayles has a wonderful cameo in the film as well. You mentioned, of course, last night how his inclusion into the script really brought the Howling together. I really think that sets it apart from so many other films about werewolves, is his sense of humor and his sly and savvy way of putting the film together.
John's a really smart guy, and he's also a real hip guy. And one of the things that werewolf movies at the time weren't going to get, they just weren't. They were either set in the past, or they were kind of staged, and they haven't been very successful with it. And so, at the risk of having the genre considered old-fashioned, which I think people did, we wanted to bump it up and make it a modern kind of a story. To the point where when we sold the movie, we didn't sell it as a werewolf movie. We sold it as a slasher. It's a distributor, Medical Embassy, and had a lot of luck with Prime Night and some other slasher kind of pictures that they made. And so they said, let's do a campaign where we don't tell people that it's about werewolves. And so
I
we did.
never knew
I didn't
that.
know that either. I didn't know what you're saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Sly Fox.
On my radio show, Ultrasonic Film, one of my most treasured interviews is I got to chat with Dick Miller right before he passed away. I definitely want to throw a shout out to Dick Miller. He steals every scene
Every
he's
scene.
in this film.
Even when he's
and
not in the scene, he steals the scene. Like in
What a
Gremlins, he
sweet
suddenly
man.
appears behind me. He wasn't in the scene, how did he get there? Joe lets him walk through, you know.
I love it. And what was the process? I'm curious because Dick Miller's in all of your films. You just call him up and you...
I worked with Dick the first time on Howling, my first picture, where he played a sleazy purple cat. And we got along great. And I've been watching him for years, and Roger Corman was starting with Bucket of Blood and other movies. And so I thought, well, you know, I really like this guy. I like to watch him act. So every time I make a movie, I'd like to see if there's a part for him. And when I got to doing The Howling, it wasn't a big part, but there was this bookstore on it. And it was a short scene. It was the first thing we shot. And, you know, in your bookstore on Hollywood Boulevard. And Dick is explaining why werewolves are fun. You know, because he just said, well, I'm selling this. But he gives you all the werewolf lore that you're supposed to know, which is a much better way to do it. Like going to the library and listening to the professor. And when the footage came in and after NBC looked at it, they said, is it a horror picture or a comedy? And frankly, through my career, I've been getting nothing but that reaction from every picture I make.
Which is what makes you
Which is what makes your
tone-
pictures so
The tone of
wonderful.
my movies is rather odd. And sometimes the studio guys just can't quite figure it out.
Somewhere between horror,
Shocker!
comedy, and Howling. You know, his movies have a lot of political stuff.
I have a lot of Mad magazines. I grew up on Mad magazine. The movies are kind of like Mad magazine. Particularly there's panels that you look at several times and realize there were extra jokes in there that you didn't get when you first read it and you didn't. And so if you look at a lot of my movies over and over, as I have to do, there's a lot of little Easter eggs and things hidden around there in case you want to see it.
But that's why they last so long. That's why they still work.
I would imagine a lot of what you learned from cutting trailers for those years for Roger Corman also influenced you as well.
Trailer cutting is a great way of learning how to make movies. Because you have to take a scene that maybe was 3 minutes long and you have to cut it down to like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. And then doing it, you have to figure out which shots you don't need to still make that point. So when you figure out how little you can get away with, you go set and you go, I don't need this shot, I don't need this shot. I shoot this here, I don't have to turn the camera on. And that's the magic of working with formulas. That you learn how to do things from even most conditions. That doesn't mean you have to do them badly or to give up and make them shitty, but there was a way to get what you wanted on a small budget and still get quality by knowing what you were doing.
Well, thanks very much for that. I know there's going to be questions out there. I want to throw it out to you guys there for The Howling. First of all, The Howling is one of my favorite pictures. How many people out there count it as one of their favorite films?
Oh, you have good taste.
All right, who's got questions here for Dee, Joe, and Brent? Yes? Oh,
The stories,
That's what I'm hoping for.
oh, he just, everybody sat around the fire with Slim and listened to his stories. And John, Verity, I mean, they they were royalty.
Royalty.
A lot of film history.
Yeah.
Best stories ever, too.
And, you know, some things are
And Kevin McCarthy, too, yes.
Some stories like Stanley Cooper, that you don't get very often firsthand.
I think Slim Pickens' best line ever in any movie is got to be, I'm working for Mel Brooks, and then he punched the guy.
Yeah, he was something.
that's awesome. Any other questions here? Yes?
My son has a question. He's nervous, so I'm going to ask with him.
Absolutely.
What was it like transitioning from doing movies that were a bit more of an adult audience and then going for more younger audiences?
That is an excellent question.
Excellent question, very good.
I never thought of that. My first movie was rated R, had a lot of nudity and sex jokes. My second movie was rated R, had a lot of summer campers being eaten by piranhas. The third movie had a lot of people being eaten by werewolves. But my fourth movie, third halfway through the Twilight Zone, but my fourth movie was Gremlins, which started out as another one of those scary R-rated movies. But when they realized how much difficulty we were going to be to make these Gremlins, they said, well, you know, we're going to have to spend some money on this picture, so maybe it shouldn't just be a picture for adults, maybe we should make it a family. And so they decided not to have another hammerhead cut off, and not have the dog. And so gradually, it was still a dark, scary movie, but it was still there was a lot of fun to it. And then I did Explorers, which is a quote kids movie, and I found I really liked it. They are so intuitive, and even if they're not schooled, they will surprise you with the most amazing reactions to things that you didn't expect. And that's true on some level of all actors. It's particularly true with child actors.
Questions? Yes.
Forgive me for this, I know it's a Howling panel, but can I ask a Gremlins question?
Well, right.
So you talked about Easter eggs, and I mentioned yesterday when I was at your table, there's that scene in Gremlins where the miserly old landlady gets tossed out of her house, and then she winds up, the shot is the bottom of her feet, which is very much like the Wicked Witch of the East. I'm wondering, like in Gremlins, are there other kind of Easter eggs that people often miss?
Well, I don't know how many things I miss. I put these things in for myself mostly. I mean, there's things where people will recognize where I got something. I mean, we all steal from each other. I mean, all filmmakers steal from other filmmakers. But sometimes it's resonant to have a particular pointing out a certain kind of scene that you've seen in other pictures and here in this picture, but it's a little different because of what's the reaction to it. And Gremlins is the movie. It's a Wonderful Life meets The Blob. It's got a family atmosphere because it's shot on a back lot to look like another movie. And one of the reasons I think that it's still a popular movie is that it's timeless looking. It doesn't look like it was made in 1980. Could have made in the 40s, could have made in the 50s. And as people see it and grow up and show it to their kids, it seems to have had this life that none of us who worked on it ever imagined it would have. I mean, movies are made as basically throwaway items. They're going to be shown in theaters, and they're going to be on TV, and then they're going to be in video stores, and that's it.
And they'll be involved.
And sooner or later, nobody will recognize any people in it, and so this is happening. I mean, there's a whole lot of people who won't watch black and white movies, who won't watch movies of people who are dead. It's just pretty typical. But it's an art form. It's in the middle of an evolving thing that's going on. It's not the kind of art form it was before COVID, certainly. And theater going is not the same as it was before COVID. And so everybody in Hollywood is scratching their heads like, what's the next thing? How do I make a new horror movie that doesn't have the same things I've seen in all the other horror movies? And Western arts, a lot of people have been able to come up with some pretty interesting takes on new ideas of ways to present these things. And so it's just, it's an evolving genre.
Yes.
I watched The Howling for the first time last night with my wife, and when it finished, we sat in silence. And she looked at me and she went, that was something. And she said, I don't know how I feel. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't know. Did you, when you're acting in it, tonally, did you feel anything different? Like, it tonally, it feels so, I don't know. I still can't describe it. How were your approach to acting in something, with the big werewolves, but also this story underneath, and just tonally, it felt really awesome.
Well, I think John Sayles really humanized the characters, which made it easier to play them. Do you know what I mean? And as far as the werewolf is concerned, it wasn't finished when we did the movie. There was no werewolf. Rob hadn't done it yet. So all of my close-ups were done with, I didn't have a clue what this thing was going to look like. Nobody. It was just me reacting, And then 4 months later, I was living in Hawaii, and Joe calls and he says, the werewolf's finished, come back. He said, you got to match your shots. I said, we're going to match my shots from 4 months ago? No, never am I going to do that. But you get in that moment and it just happens. It's like your body just goes right into it, and if you really believe what you're doing, you really throw yourself into it, there's really nothing else you can do. It just all flows.
For me, Howling was always a story about the the battle between the light and the dark. And within my character, she was also battling to find her balance between the light and the dark, within herself, within her relationship, within the business she was in. And I don't know, it just all made sense to me. Just all made sense.
It's not exactly
I just knew her.
not exactly a feminist horror movie, but it does. It's a movie with female protagonists, which humanizes it, I think, to a point that's going to be different from, say, American Werewolf, which has got male protagonists.
If you really want to appreciate what Belinda said, Joe, we would get our energy up and get ready, and the big transformation, you know, Joe would say, okay, now he's getting taller.
You're like going,
Okay, there come his ears. Now his nose is growing. I mean,
it was hard not to laugh.
it was challenging,
Very challenging.
you know,
You
very
gotta
challenging.
remember, these people have nothing to look at. I mean, you could
Air.
you could show them sketches, so that they obviously know that there's something there. So they were acting right how it goes, something like that. You know, the puppets weren't there on the right how it goes, because the actors didn't believe they were there. And when you look at a scene like the transformation scene in this movie, which was such a big deal, it's all on her. She's reacting constantly, because she's playing, quote, the cutaway, so that you can go from one makeup to the next makeup. And so, for that reason, the scene runs, I think, a little too long. But it was used to sell the movies to exhibitors. And when the studio, the exhibitors went, yes, we'll buy the movie. The studio said, don't cut that scene. Don't make it any shorter. If anything, make it longer. Because that's what the exhibitors want. And so to this day, I've always felt that if I had my brothers, I would shorten the movie.
But the thing is, when you don't have the real werewolf there, you're working twice as hard. And I think that's why we're so believable. Because we really had to create this in our imaginations in order to sell it to ourselves and believe what we were doing. By the time they made the werewolf, it was almost obsolete. You know?
And you know, the challenge with something like that is not to overact.
Very much.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing, because in the few instances in my life where I've really been that frightened, you freeze. You freeze and you take it in, and in your brain you're going, oh my God, this isn't happening. Is this happening? What am I going to do? Should I run? Should I, you know? In acting class, what you want to do is go, oh my God, it's over. You know, but it's not real. If you were really in that situation.
You've got to remember, like in the scene where Belinda gets killed, spoiler. She's reacting, sometimes she's only reacting to a pair of legs, because we didn't have a complete werewolf. We had a guy with an upper body,
like
and we
without a
had
stick.
legs. And so it's a triumph of editing that you look at this movie and you think that you're actually looking at something that's really happened. Because in fact, it's all a bunch of pieces of different pieces of fur, basically, that have been put together to make it look like there's something real.
Brilliant.
And that's the great thing about movies, is that, you know, it's not real, but you make it real.
And Belinda, when you came back 4 months later, there was a little bit of a different hair, wasn't there?
My hair was longer, and I told Gigi, our makeup and hair lady, I said, my hair's longer, you need to trim it. She said, no, it looks the same. And I said, no, it's quite a bit longer, it's been 4 months. She said, I have Polaroids, it looks the same. I said, okay. But if you watch that in slow motion, my hair goes like this. You don't notice it because you're so involved in the moment, but it's funny to watch in slow motion.
Yes, right there in the back.
I had a question about practical effects. I seem to see a lot of great use of practical effects in almost all of your movies, and I just wanted to ask what you think people can learn from that sort of effects specialty, and maybe what is a new, or what is something interesting that is coming out recently that might catch your attention, or perhaps there's a lack of that, I'm not sure.
Well, practical effects are, I think, better than CGI, although CGI is great, and it's even better in making practical effects look better. But practical effects are useful because it's happening in front of you. It's happening, the actors have something to see, you know. Sometimes they don't because the effects aren't done yet. But nonetheless, if the more real it is, the more on the set it is, the more stuff is going on, you know, with the performances and the camera and everything. But when you say, well, just shoot a plate and we'll put it in later with CGI, like I had to do with Rob Small Soldiers, it's not the same. I mean, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to make people believe.
But I have to say on Gremlins, you know, people think, well, was it really scary to work with the Gremlins? And no, it wasn't scary. It was 30 guys on their knees. It's hard to keep your focus, you know, on what you're supposed to be seeing and not really see these guys on their knees.
But now today you can do the same movie with the same effects and not have to have the guys under the floor and not have them behind the wall, behind the chair, because you can just put them right next to the puppets and then you can do another pass and you can take them out. And so practical effects, I think, are more useful than ever.
Yes.
I think CGI is once removed. Do you guys have that feeling? Do you feel once removed when you're watching a film CGI? Yeah. I do too. It's like it's happening over there, but not to me. You know, yeah.
I just want to know, for the end of the Howling, what your inspiration was to end the movie with cooking of the hamburger. After everything that's taken place, what we saw, I'm always hungry at the end of it. As you can see, I watched that movie.
Well, the end of the Howling, I stole it from a movie called The Legend of Lilac, which is a Robert Aldrich movie. You know, like an actress in Hollywood. It's a dark movie. But it ends with a food commercial. Dogs fighting with each other. And I was just impressed with that. And so in The Howling, when you cut away from Dee Wallace being killed, we cut to dog food commercial, just like in that movie. And I figured, well, I might as well just keep going with the dog food. And so by the time we got to the end of it, you know, we have the scene in the bar where people set their lines, and then we see that the bad lady has survived. And then we had, okay, now what are we going to do? They're cooking hamburgers, let's cut to the hamburger. So we cut to the hamburger and we left it on for the whole run of it.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong about this, because I think I had in my contract that my character would never appear as a werewolf.
Yes.
Okay, and then you called me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody had turned in their cards and wanted to see my character as a werewolf. And I said to you, could you just make her a little more vulnerable because she's fought so hard against these werewolves? Did that have anything to do with the fact that you ended up with this Bambi werewolf?
I mean, the last shot of her as a werewolf is not her, it's a puppet. And it looks like a pig. It's not a standard werewolf, it's a Dee werewolf. And some people have said, wow, she doesn't look like the other werewolves in the movie. But it's like, it's because she's not evil, she's not bad, she's not a werewolf because of the things that they're doing where she's worked really hard to get to where she is now. And she's had to have herself killed on camera to prove to people that this is real. And this is her reward. I mean, she doesn't look like a slavery monster, she looks like a sort of a puppet.
I love baby.
And we shot it.
Dee, you mentioned that scene. I just have to mention that sequence for the monologue on camera at the end, and then dramatically turned into the werewolf. Obviously, that's still you before we get to the puppet. It's a remarkable, powerful, dramatic sequence. Do you remember filming that? And,
oh, sure, I do.
What your process was on that? Because it gets me every time.
You know, go ahead. Do you have a story?
No, I was hoping they're going to give away some secrets.
We like secrets.
I have to tell you that the technique I use doesn't involve anything from my brain. It's all based on energy, and it's a technique that a man named Charles Conrad taught me. I studied with Uta Hagen and Jeff Corey and all the greats. But when I found this man, Charles Conrad, he opened up the world of acting for me. And it's based on getting your energy extremely high. And what that does is it takes you out of your mental mind and kind of opens you up to be a channel for the character. So I just kind of get my energy up and turn it over to the character. I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, that you said, don't worry about screaming, we'll lay that in post. And I said, I think, well, give me a shot. Is that what I said? And that is my scream. That they echo it, you know. I hadn't practiced that scream. I didn't know what I was going to do with that scream, but that's what came out in the moment. And I have so much trust in this technique. I just trust what the character tells me what to do.
That's awesome.
Now, I know that sounds hokey, but that's the way I work.
It's like an actor getting out of the way of themselves.
Yeah.
Creative energy, you know.
Yeah.
It's really just so.
And I know a lot of times you wish I would have gone farther, don't you?
No.
I thought you said that to me.
No, what I said was that I thought that your strengths were not being the tough news on at the beginning of the movie. The woman was good out there, you know, making a name for herself and all that. So that wasn't your strong point. So we didn't use much of that. We put you in jeopardy
I
right away.
totally all these years misunderstood that.
I understood that about your character.
No,
Very
about what he's, because I went up to him. You have to understand, this is the beginning of my career.
1980.
And so I said, Joe, just tell me, are there any tips you would have given me? I was asking him, am I okay in this film? Do you think I'm a good actress? And I thought you said to me, yes, Dee, but I just wish you'd go further and let it out more. Oh, good. You did it.
You mentioned Slim Pickens, of course, John Carey. You have an incredible cast in what presumably is not an enormously budgeted film. How did you do it? How did you arrange everybody and get everybody together? This is one of your first films, so.
It is, and it was a pretty low budget movie. $1 million all in.
Wow.
I had to ask for more money to get more roles. But at that time, character actors were frequently doing those kind of movies, and as long as the parts could be taken and paid. And that's the secret of getting those kind of people into those kind of movies.
Yeah.
To make sure that the parts are compressed. So they can be all over the whole movie, but you can shoot them out in a day or two.
Right.
And that's why some of those people have been funded and only worked for 3 days. You know, I'm sure you made a lot more money on Blazing Saddles than you did on that one.
Awesome, sounds good. Are there any other questions in the back? Yeah, yes.
Yeah, how come you didn't want to be a werewolf on screen? I want to be a werewolf on screen.
It was a big thing in the 80s. I don't know if you were the star or one of the stars, you didn't look like a monster.
Even Jack Nicholson didn't really turn into a wolf and wolf, you know.
I don't know.
Thanks, Dante.
It was a BS thing, you know.
I get it, I guess, yeah. I get it. It's like you don't want to be seen.
And I don't think I was even a part of that decision. I think that's something my agents stuck in there.
Because they want your face like the whole time.
Well, they just, I don't know.
It's like John Wayne never loses
Really?
a fight in a movie or something like that.
She wants to have a career, she doesn't want to be a wolf all her life.
Well, in your next wolf movie, I have no problem.
Me either, Joe.
I don't think there's going to be a next one.
Yes, back there.
Thanks. In watching the movie last night, I've never read the book, but what struck me, one of the many things that struck me was the fact that it's set in the TV news world. And when you think about TV news and how it transforms what we understand about the world, and then think about werewolves and the transformation there, was that a conscious decision? Was that part of the book, or did that come out of
No, there's nothing like that in the book. There's no TV station. That's not her job in the book. In the book, she basically lives to get raped. And that's the whole thing. I was not a fan of the book. And I used a lot of time trying to get away from it.
I'm glad I never read it.
It's a good read as a book, and I got a bus or something, but, it's a town full of werewolves that's isolated, and everybody's windows are boarded up, but it's on a main line. That's ridiculous. There's just nothing to believe in. The book is all completely unbelievable. And so when John came in, we just tried to say, let's make it as up to date as we can, and let's make it about the same world that people live in. And so that's why it's got so much TV stuff in it. It's got the Guest, which was very big at the time. The whole colony,
Yeah.
Doctor, and everything that's all based on what was really
I didn't know it was based on S. Wow, that makes so much sense. Do y'all know what S is? Okay, never mind.
It was a way of living where there was a guru that you could never go to the bathroom.
It's like a cult.
It's a cult.
Yeah.
There you go.
And,
Existential.
Sounds like a cult.
It was a training.
And it was a fad also.
Yeah.
A lot of people were into it. The editor, my co-editor, actually went to some S meetings, and they don't let you go to the bathroom.
That's true.
And
Well,
so-
they let you, but you have to do this dog and pony
So
show.
what he basically did, he put a couch on, and he just went in and went into the collector. But I thought it was interesting that a lot of people were actually editing the movie was doing their kind of work, which makes it a little more realistic.
Yeah.
One other cameo was Forrest J. Ackerman, and I was just wondering, I'm assuming you grew up as like a monster kid and you had the biggest monsters in his hand. Did that influence your filmmaking the way you went with it?
Well, no, I mean, it was a werewolf movie, and I wanted to make it, the guy was running a comic book store, and he figured, well, it's a good part for Forrest Ackerman. He'd already been in some other movies, and Forrest would show up with his own props, because he had his own stuff, and as long as you didn't give him a lot of dialogue, he was fine. And I guess I grew up reading those comics, so those magazines, and I switched later to more adult magazines, but Famous Monsters lasted for a long time. Basically by reprinting the first 2 years of stuff over and over. But a lot of kids learned a lot of things about movies that were made long before they were born from that magazine. And there's a phrase we use of people who were in that group as monster kids, for all monster kids.
The Howling, oh yes, go ahead.
Hi, Joe, I was just wondering, most werewolf stories that are about sexuality are often dealing with like adolescents, like Teenage Werewolf and Ginger Snaps. But yours is about adults and repressed sexuality. And based on how you said you weren't even a fan of the book, I was wondering how you kind of approach this idea of making this kind of an adult sexuality movie with these monsters and stuff.
Well, I approached it because that was the story. I was aware that it was often used as a metaphor for adolescence, but we didn't have a lot of adolescents in the movie. So I think we just went down a different road. And in fact, we had people actually watching the original Wolfman on TV to get the lore instead of having to go to the library. The difference in this movie is that the characters know as much about werewolves as the audience does. And that is the big change from all the previous movies, where they always were based on the idea that the idea of werewolves being added to the audience. But in the world we lived, everybody knew that. And so these were the first characters who actually were aware of what was going on, and it became a trope. And the Scream movies, of course, drew on that.
The Howling is known as one of the best werewolf movies now, 40 years later. It's also had an enormous number of sequels. I'm curious if any of you have watched these sequels? These reactions?
Oh my God. No, I've heard about them, but I've never watched them.
Well, they sent me the script for Howling 2, and I said, I'm sorry, I don't do pornography yet.
And Joe, have you checked some of them up?
Well, not really. I mean, I had to watch Howling too because the higher Christopher Reeve films too. Because have you seen Howling too? So you should see it.
So that really made you want to see it.
And so the band is part of my issue. But the Howling sequels are. They made attempts to go back and try to film the book, which I thought I had experienced, but it was not possible. But nonetheless, they kept making them. And the reason was that the title moved away, and somebody owned the title. And once they owned the title, they started to just farm it out to be copyrighted.
Yeah.
And so all of the movies have no connectivity whatsoever. They're all separate movies, and they're all the same story. And most of them don't even have werewolves. There's one clever one where they tried to make it about a werewolf and
They capture you in their pocket.
For all I know, they're making it.
Any other questions there? Okay, I have to ask you, both mentioned earlier, all of you, how much fun it was making this film. But making films can be quite challenging, so I'm kind of curious, it being, of course, shot for only $1 million, what were some of the biggest challenges for all three of you for making The Howling? Dee, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, energy. I mean, there was a lot of energy, especially for Belinda and a lot of emotion, you know, and like I said, we would shoot 3 nights and then we would turn into days. I swear to God, you guys, the alarm would go off and my dog would get up and walk into the wall. She didn't know if it were morning or night, and neither did we, quite frankly. Fortunately, can I tell a story? So, Dan Flatt, our producer, called and he, after I had been hired, and said, so Dee, we have a really great cast. We just can't find the guy to play your husband. And I said, well, what are you looking for exactly? Well, you know, somebody who's very virile, but who has it sensitive. And I thought, oh my God, I'm engaged to Christopher Stone, who is a really well-known actor. But I knew if I said that, they'd go, no freaking way are we going to bring her fiance in, you know. So I said, you know, there's this guy I did Chips with, Christopher Smith or Stone. So he went out and found him and brought him in, and Christopher got it on his own. And a couple of days later, Dan called and said, so Dee, that guy you suggested, well, actually what happened was I picked up the phone and he said, oh, Dee, you know that guy you suggested, we hired him. I thought I was calling him, and I said, you are. And there was this long silence. Then I hear, oh shit. But I said, Dan, look, you only have to get one trailer. But we, you know, and to my, you know, pat on the back, you remember he had this very intense love scene with the she-wolf. And do you remember you came to me and you said, so Dee, the crew wants to know, are you going to be here when we shoot the big scene? I said, no, I'm going to the bar in town.
Joe, challenges for you on The Howling?
Well, I think you've heard them. It was a little more money than I had for my previous picture, but it was very ambitious. And to make it on that schedule, on that budget, I was so lucky in the cast that it was like every time I would just cut to somebody, it was like somebody good. And so
Thank you.
That you know, dealing with the effects and the fact that they were layered and the fact that the first bunch of effects we worked and shot didn't work, and we had to go back and reshoot them, and ask for more money from another investor. It was difficult movie to make, but I can't say that I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I had a good time on the set.
Yeah.
Belinda?
Well, the biggest challenge for me was getting the part because Joe wouldn't let me audition. He said, you have the part, and he was holding auditions, and I'm like, I was in Hawaii. I said, don't you want me to fly in? He said, no, you already have the part. I said, why are you holding auditions? He said, because I have to, legally, I have to. And I was like sitting in Hawaii going, he's going to cast somebody else, you know. I said, please, let me fly in. He said, what if you blow it? Oh, great. So when I was on the set with John Sayles doing the scene in the mortuary, John turned to me and he said, you know, I wrote this part for you. I said, I'm sorry, what? He said, I wrote this part for you because I love what you did with the character in Piranha, and I took that character and expanded her into Terry Fisher, and I never knew that. That was just delightful for me. So
Yeah.
I was challenged to really be as good as he wanted me to be.
And then in the end, Belinda, you ended up doing 12 movies
I've
with
done
Joe.
12 movies with Joe. Dick and I both did 12
I've only done
movies.
one.
You've done 2. Joe,
That wasn't a movie.
that was a movie. It was an HBO movie.
Okay.
That wasn't a movie. Dick and I have both done 12 movies with Joe. We've only had one scene together.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's very
And
weird.
it was an hour.
It was in Howling, yeah. People think you know each other, you know, because you're in the same movie, but sometimes you don't even meet the people, you know. I came out when John Carradine was doing his scenes. I said, please, 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 can I come to the set? I want to meet him, you know. So I came out there and watched that scene, and I got to know John very well. But if I hadn't come out, I never would have met him, you know.
What did you ever see me in? That had 10 is what you brought me in for the Howling.
You didn't know that?
I didn't.
I knew that.
Okay. I love 10.
Yeah.
I just never knew that.
Is that with Bo Derek?
Yeah. Bo and John Derek.
I remember the poster when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm the girl that Dudley can't get it up with.
Oh, yeah?
And I've been playing mothers ever since.
So for as far as convention, oh yeah, we got a question back there.
Just on a note of playing mothers and kind of wholesome characters, every now and again you play a less wholesome character, they get fragrant, and I was just wondering, like, is it because you kind of have always the mother and the wholesome side of things? When you do get to play something a little darker, a little more evil, like Frighteners or the bit in like Grief from Hell, what's that like for you?
I really like it because it gives me an opportunity to play another side of me. You know.
There is another side.
There are multiple sides.
To all of us,
Yes.
you know. But it's exciting. Not that playing the wholesome roles aren't exciting also, you know. But an actor wants to act in different things and bring all the different colors to life.
And that's what's so great about Joe, because Joe wanted to have this repertoire company that he used in all his movies. You know, whether he played a small part or a big part or this part or that part, like Bob Carter, he's played everything. Every kind of character you could possibly imagine in Joe's movies, you know. And it's great because you really are able to play multiple characters that live inside of us actors.
And also, it's a kind of a little family because you get together with your friends and everybody knows everybody and everybody knows how everything works. And the reason people love to work with the same people, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera, is because they have a shorthand with each other. They all know each other. They know how to approach them and how they think. And it saves an incredible amount of time.
Yeah, like when I go in to do a movie for Rob Zombie, I know I'm going to do the scripted scene, and then he's going to say, everybody bring in your best shit. and it's just a big improv party, and we know that that's going to happen.
You've already got the one yellow. So
Yeah.
you can use that, but
Yeah.
why not take up one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, just on banking on his question also. I kind of credit sort of Dee Wallace's characters in horror with sort of this, mothers in a lot of previous films are sort of villainous or they're comedic, right? And Dee Wallace's mother characters in horror are often very strong, multifaceted, like determined women.
Thank you.
Sort of, it's less of like, you know, it's not, like, there are a lot of young female characters in horror especially too. And with Dee, I felt like it was this sort of like idealized, sort of like, you know, like the mother you want, right? Kind of like, she's protecting you, she's strong, you know? She knows she's frightened, but she's also sort of like, she knows she has to do this thing. And it's
I'm
sort of
sorry,
like,
have you lived my life?
every horror film you're in, it's sort of like you have this, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to bear up and I'm going to do it because I have to.
Have you lived my life? Yeah.
But it's sort of like,
Thank
I credit you with creating that character.
That's a
that you see
great
more
compliment.
frequently.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any last minute questions there? Yes.
So in most movies, something always gets edited out. Is there a scene that was edited out that you wish that were?
My nude scene.
The hot tub scene.
You didn't see anything in the hot tub. Slim Pickens saw it. I forgot that was edited out.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of minutes in the movie because in the original cut, both Belinda and Dennis Dugan go up to the colony. And for reasons of telling the story, we had to change that. So we had to eliminate all the scenes where Dennis is at the colony, including blowing up a few scenes that he was in, because we still have to use them. But I mean, there's a lot of editorial stuff that goes on. Just try to make the story work. Because you end up, no matter how long your schedule is, you sometimes end up with a 2.5 hour run. And that means you've got to take things away. If you take things away, this thing affects the other thing. And now it's like, oh, well, it doesn't go to the colony, then we got to shoot some other stuff. And we got to take them. Can't use those things. So it's interesting. Editing, I started editing, and it's one of the most interesting parts.
That's why it's so
Brilliant.
I literally run from Mendocino to Big Bear. And that scene where I'm running, I have running shots in Mendocino, then we came back to Griffith Park. I did running scenes in Griffith Park, and then we went to Big Bear and we did running scenes there. If you watch the trees all changed. And you can see I'm going south, you know, to more palm trees, and you know, it's true. It's the longest run. That run goes on forever.
I have to say, Belinda and I really were so fortunate because from day one on the set, we loved each other.
Yeah.
And I have done movies with other female actors that weren't very nice. And it really,
makes
thank
such a
you.
difference.
There are female actors that aren't nice.
Well, at least to other female actors,
Yes,
yeah.
I have too.
Yeah.
No, it was really a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah.
We gelled so quickly, and you're still the same, and we still have that feeling towards each other.
Yeah.
You know, we share, and it's nice.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Belinda, Joe, and Dee for this remarkable film that has been through the ages so long and is one of the best werewolf movies out there. Thank you so much.